The 1970s, an era of some truly iconic motorcycles. And then there were the bikes that hit the road like rusted bolts, leaving a trail of disappointment and frustration in their wake. While the Honda CB750 and Harley-Davidson XR750 were stealing the spotlight, some motorcycles were so unloved and unfixable that even the bravest riders steered clear. Were the creators out of ideas, or were riders just gluttons for punishment? Maybe it was a little bit of both. Buckle up, or should I say hold on tight, as we take a look back at the 10 most hated motorcycles from the 1970s that nobody, not even the most die-hard retro fans, wants to see make a comeback. Number 10. Suzuki RE5. The Suzuki RE5 was supposed to be the next big thing with its Wankel rotary engine, a true marvel of engineering. But as it turns out, innovative sometimes translate to what on earth were they thinking? When Suzuki announced their guarantee, a full engine replacement within 12 months or 12,000 miles, enthusiasts should have heard alarm bells ringing louder than a disco inferno. And the strangeness didn't stop there. Rotary engines were hot, so Suzuki decked out the RE5 with both water and oil cooling systems and an exhaust that looked like it was ripped straight from a sci-fi flick, double-skinned and snake-like. The real kicker? You practically needed an engineering degree to understand the 5 throttle cables that controlled everything from the carburetor to the oil supply. And let's not forget Giugiaro's tin can instrument cluster, complete with a slide-open cover. Was it futuristic? Maybe in a space-age fever dream kind of way. Despite all these quirks, the RE5's handling was surprisingly good. But as Cycle World so aptly put it, expensive, overcomplicated, underpowered, and hideous. The RE5 wasn't destined for legendary status, just a place in the annals of motorcycle history as a cautionary tale of when too much innovation meets too little common sense. Number 9. Yamaha YZF-R1. While bikes like Honda's Fireblade became the epitome of user-friendliness, delighting both newbies and seasoned riders alike, the Yamaha YZF-R1 seemed to have a different agenda, testing just how much discomfort a rider could endure. Let's talk about the R1. Foot pegs seemingly designed by a contortionist, a seat that felt like you were perching on a slab of granite, and handlebars that made every ride feel like an endless session of push-ups. Sure, the engine was an absolute beast, and the handling could slice through corners like a hot knife through butter, but you'd be too busy wincing in agony to truly appreciate it. Why subject yourself to all that when Yamaha's MT-10 offers the same thrilling performance without the chiropractic bills? Sometimes it's okay to choose enjoyment over suffering. Trust me, your back, and every other part of you, will thank you. Number 8. Honda DN01. Honda engineers gathered around the table with the bold idea: create a motorcycle that defines categorization. What did they come up with? Dream New Concept 1. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi flick, right? Well, some Honda dealership employees had a different take. Do not order one. The DN01 was the motorcycle equivalent of an identity crisis. Was it a scooter, a cruiser, or a sports bike? Technically, it was all three, just not in a way that pleased anyone. It was like mixing pizza, sushi, and ice cream in one dish. Interesting in theory, but a disaster on the plate. With a 680cc V-twin engine and Honda's human-friendly transmission, the DN01 was about as thrilling as watching paint dry. As a scooter, it was laughably large. As a cruiser, it seemed to be an existential crisis next to iconic Harleys, and while it carried Honda's signature quality, the price tag ensured you'd be one of the few daring or regretting enough to own it. Number 7. Harley-Davidson Street 750 Street Rod. The Harley-Davidson Street 750 Street Rod rolled out with the legendary V-twin engine, but it was so underwhelming that Harley-Davidson didn't even bother to brag about the horsepower. Now that's a red flag. When a brand built on roaring power keeps quiet, you know something's amiss. The Street Rod tried to redeem itself with better brakes and a bit more grunt, but riding it was still like perching on a sofa that was propped up on stilts. Comfort? Not so much. Handling? Let's just say you'd have more fun wrestling a bear. By 2021, Harley quietly let the Street Rod slip into the shadows, hoping we'd all forget this misstep. Nice try, Harley, but some things are harder to forget than the lyrics to Born to Be Wild. Number 6. Suzuki B-King. The Suzuki B-King isn't despised for what it was, but for what it could have been. At the 2001 Tokyo Motor Show, Suzuki had us all drooling with an idea so wild it seemed straight out of a superhero's dream garage. A naked, supercharged Hayabusa with 240 horsepower, wrapped in carbon fiber, stainless steel, and leather. It looked like Batman's next ride, complete with futuristic goodies like GPS-based weather alerts, visor-protected info, and fingerprint ignition. This bike was more sci-fi blockbuster than street cruiser. But when the production model finally hit the asphalt, reality slapped us in the face. The horsepower was downgraded to a mere 164. All the cool space-age electronics were axed, and what was once a sleek, aggressive design suddenly felt as outdated as an 80s arcade game. And just like that, the B-King became a cautionary tale, promising us the moon, but delivering a rock. A true what could have been in the annals of motorcycle history. Number 5. Victory V92C. Polaris rolled out Victory motorcycles in 1998, aiming to challenge Harley-Davidson's dominance in the cruiser market. It was a gutsy move, but like a rookie boxer stepping into the ring with a heavyweight champ, it didn't quite go as planned, especially in those early rounds. Victory's first contender, the V92C, had the right idea but was rougher than sandpaper on a sunburn. The real issue? Polaris rushed it to market without ironing out the kinks, particularly in the clutch and transmission. If you've ever griped about Harley's transmission being clunky, the V92C made it feel like shifting gears on a bulldozer. Clunky, jarring, and anything but smooth. And the design? It was like mixing Harley's classic style with a dash of Kawasaki Vulcan, resulting in a bike that didn't quite know what it wanted to be. It's no wonder Victory's debut almost KO'd the brand before it had a chance to find its stride. Thankfully, later models managed to redeem Victory, offering solid alternatives to Harley-Davidson. But those early V92Cs, they're a reminder that sometimes rushing to compete leads to more than a few bruises. Number 4. Bimota V-Due. By 1997, two-stroke road motorcycles were as rare as a polite New York cabbie, but on the track, they still reigned supreme. The secret sauce? Ever-evolving engine management systems that turned these machines into fire-breathing rideable rockets. Enter Bimota with the V-Due, a bike that promised to shake things up with its clean-burning two-stroke engine and direct injection fuel system. Enthusiasts were giddy with excitement. Finally, a two-stroke with cutting-edge tech. But as the saying goes, the higher the expectations, the harder the fall. And fall it did. The V-Due's fuel injection system was less innovative and more nightmare-inducing. Imagine your bike suddenly deciding to either take a nap or go full throttle in the middle of a corner, without any electronic traction control to keep you from becoming a roadside attraction. Every ride on the V-Due was an exercise in chaos. Bimota's bold attempt at revolutionizing the two-stroke wasn't just a failure, it was a full-blown disaster, taking the company down with it. So, thanks to the V-Due, we now have a prime example of how not to innovate in motorcycle history. Sometimes the road to bankruptcy is paved with good intentions and poor execution. Number 3. Kawasaki Vulcan 2000. Let's venture into the peculiar world of Japanese cruisers with the Kawasaki Vulcan 2000, a bike that somehow missed the memo on what riders actually wanted. Imagine cruising down the highway on a machine that tips the scales at a jaw-dropping 820 pounds. Yes, you heard that right, 820 pounds of pure, unadulterated bulk. Trying to maneuver this beast was like arm wrestling a bear. Even Hercules would have called for a timeout. Sure, the Vulcan 2000 packed a punch with 121 foot-pounds of torque, enough to catapult you forward with just a twist of the throttle. But here's the kicker. The low rev limit meant you were constantly shifting gears, making the ride feel more like a chore than a joy. It was like piloting a lumbering potato with the ergonomics of a medieval torture device. And the style? Well, let's just say the Vulcan 2000 wasn't winning any beauty pageants. Its design had all the street cred of a minivan at a biker rally. The seats were as wide as a sofa and about as comfortable as sitting on a brick, while its descendants, like the 1700 Voyager and Vaquero, are still lumbering around. They're now even heavier and fully loaded for long hauls. But let's be honest, this heavyweight bruiser's more suited to plodding along the highway than carving up the open road. Number 2. Kawasaki H1 500 and H2 750. In the 1960s, Japanese engineers had a straightforward mantra: more power. And boy, did they go all out. But here's where things took a comedic turn, because while they nailed the power, they seemed to forget that a rocket needs more than just fuel. It needs control. Enter the 1969 Kawasaki H1 500, a two-stroke, three-cylinder beast cranking out 60 horsepower. Imagine strapping a jet engine to a bicycle, and you got a pretty good idea what it was like to ride one of these. But there was a problem, a big one. The H1's chassis and suspension were better suited for a leisurely Sunday stroll than a white-knuckle thrill ride. High-speed cornering on this thing? It was like trying to tame a bucking bronco, if that bronco had a jetpack strapped to its back. Now, surprisingly, the H1 quickly gained a reputation for being, let's say, a little risky. Riding one of these bad boys was like signing up for a rodeo without knowing how to ride a horse. Then came 1972's Kawasaki H2 750 with a whopping 74 horsepower and a reputation that made the H1 look like a tricycle. This bike, affectionately dubbed the Widowmaker, was both a beauty and a beast. It was the perfect storm of jaw-dropping power and terrifying design flaws, earning it a place in the annals of motorcycle infamy. Too many riders found themselves widowed, or worse, after underestimating this high-octane thrill ride. It's the stuff of legends, for all the right and wrong reasons. Number 1. 1970s Harley Davidson. In the 1970s, Harley Davidson was more than just a brand. It was an institution. But behind the chrome and leather, the company was on life support. Enter American Machine and Foundry, AMF, a conglomerate known for making everything from bowling balls to nuclear reactors. Motorcycles? Not so much. Yet, they swooped in for an acquisition, hoping to ride Harley's reputation to the bank. Here's the problem. AMF knew as much about motorcycles as a fish knows about flying. Under their stewardship, Harley-Davidson began to look and feel like relics from a bygone era. The engines. Oh, those engines. Were outdated knucklehead units desperately trying to keep up with modern demands. The harder Harley's engineers pushed for more power, the more these machines fell apart. And it didn't stop there. The build quality of these bikes took a nosedive, leaving loyal riders wondering if they'd accidentally bought a vintage model. Only it wasn't supposed to be vintage. Vibration? Let's just say these bikes could double as paint shakers. Rides became endurance tests, with every bump on the road reminding you just how far Harley had fallen. By the time Harley was ready for a buyout, it was nothing short of a miracle that they were still in business. The once proud symbol of American freedom was hanging on by a thread, its reputation battered and bruised. But as history would show, Harley-Davidson would eventually rise from the ashes, though not without a few bumps along the way. So, have you ever had the pleasure of riding one of these infamous bikes? If so, we'd love to hear your war stories. Drop them in the comments below. And hey, if you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, or should we say nightmare lane, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more updates. You wouldn't want to miss out on our next video.